We are reviewing Episode 16, Megatron's Master Plan, Part 2, this time on Energon Entries. Welcome back to Energon Entries, everybody. As always, this is your host, Matt Freites. I hope that this finds you well. I want to thank you, as always, for tuning in. I hope that you're having fun, and we are wrapping up this two-part series, Megatron's Master Plan. And so with that, let's get to the episode recap. The episode begins with Sean Berger announcing Decepticon Day in Central City as a marching band parades through the streets. Meanwhile, Spike uncovers evidence proving the Autobots' innocence, but is forced to battle Ravage to escape with the tapes. As the Decepticons revel at a high school disco, the Autobots, exiled into space, realize they are headed toward the sun and attempt to regain control of their ship. On Earth, Megatron reveals his plan to enslave humanity and drain the planet's energy, leaving Spike and the mayor scrambling to clear the Autobots' names. Despite their ship overheating near the sun, the Autobots are saved by Trailbreaker's force field and Cosmos, who eventually turns them back toward Earth. The episode ends with the Autobots returning just in time to defeat the Decepticons, reclaim their honor, and see Berger taken away to face justice as the Autobots transform and roll for home. Alright, so this is part 2 of a two-part episode, and normally in these episodes we kind of find something out that's revelatory, or we're getting something that is of permanence. So as we're going through this recap and this review, let's hope that we find something there. But we start off with the narrator, giving a very concise synopsis of the previous episode. One thing I've complained about in the past is that the narrator gave things away. In this case, they just clearly gave you a synopsis of the episode, and that was it. So the episode starts with a parade, and the parade is to celebrate the Decepticons. And I find this so funny because the Decepticons have been awful the entirety of the show. And the Autobots have been, or perceived to be bad for 5 minutes, and there you go. We're already having a parade. We're celebrating the Decepticons. It makes humanity look really, really dumb. And obviously, Sean Berger is one of the worst humans in this show so far because he's so power hungry that he can't see that no matter what he does, the Decepticons are going to betray him. And he is just a microcosm of what humanity, at least in America right now, is going through. They see one piece of evidence and they overreact. And, 40 years ago, that probably wasn't as prevalent as it is today, but it's kind of revelatory thinking about that in the terms of 2024's reactions to things, not just politics or anything. We always have to have an overreaction. So humans obviously were capable of that back then. But the Decepticons were in disguise. We found that out last episode. They were dressed as Autobots. And it seemed, at least from this episode, when Spike was rewatching it, they're kind of trying to get you back in the groove of what happened. And the Decepticons fit into these what seem to be metal costumes. And I don't know how they did, because obviously every Transformer is shaped differently. And where did the evidence go? Where did these suits go? How did they manage to get rid of them? And a lot of questions about that plan, but obviously it was a good plan. It worked for the short amount of time that they needed to show that the Autobots were bad, and so there you go. And so the Decepticons are out here. I think they're making an attempt to celebrate with the humans to gain their trust, although they should know that it took all of 5 minutes to gain their trust. But Soundwave and his tape seen at what looked like an 80s dance party, or maybe it was a school dance or something, it felt completely unnecessary. It really did. And I think that the only reason that it existed was because Laserbeak showed that he was getting upset the way that the humans were asking him questions. And that's fine. But really, it was just completely unnecessary. Now, the Autobots are questioning Optimus Prime's decision-making as we finally see them in the ship, and they're all still sitting there, they're all buckled in, and some of the Autobots are getting a little mouthy with Optimus Prime. We've been seeing more of that this season, that Optimus Prime has had some of his decisions questioned, and I think this is in line with the Autobots in general, because they are not dominated by Optimus Prime the way that Megatron dominates the Decepticons. No leader is perfect, and so I think Optimus Prime is fine with being questioned most of the time. And in this case, he realized, I think I've made a grave mistake. But now they can't fix their mistake. And this seems like some sort of karma for Optimus Prime being so stubborn in what he wanted to do the last episode. And Cosmos is outside the ship. They're talking to him. What's interesting is that Cosmos is outside the ship, but we kind of don't find out until later that he is programmed by Teletran 1, but you get to see inside a little bit, and apparently he has a cockpit in there. So I'm curious as to why the humans haven't ridden with him to space before, but I guess we'll hopefully get to that later. But they are getting affected, the ship is, and the Autobots inside, as they're getting closer to the sun, the heat is starting to really affect them. You see it melting away parts of the ship. Cosmos then goes into the ship to try to figure out what to do. He doesn't seem to be affected by it. This is sort of an inconsistency that this show has a lot, where some Autobots or humans are affected by something and some aren't. And in this case, it didn't really have a big difference because Cosmos wasn't able to do anything, but just another piece of continuity that doesn't seem to jive here. And so we go back to Earth, and Megatron is watching all of this unfold, which is fascinating. Like, how does he get a camera? They always have a camera to look at everything, no matter where it's happening. But this is the most pot calling the kettle black moment so far. And it shows that the bad guys in this show, no matter what they look like, how they are intertwined, they never get along. Whether it's the Decepticons and the Insecticons or bad humans and the Decepticons, they never truly get along. As this is happening, they're showing Spike there, and I keep thinking to myself, man, I've been really hard on this kid. I've talked about the fact that he has just gotten himself in trouble so often, but in this case, he's actually providing evidence that shows that he doesn't always just get himself into trouble. And it's probably not character growth from the show writer's perspective, but it seems like it, and it makes me happy. So Megatron has a press conference, which is interesting, and he wastes zero time in revealing his plan. I'm going to take over the Earth, and I'm going to make all of you get the energy that I need until we have every piece of energy from this planet. And the humans react in a way, I think one of them said, "We've been had," like as if the Decepticons haven't been this crappy all along. This story in and of itself doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. It feels a little bit contrived, and I don't know. I don't get it. But Megatron now saying he's going to rule by martial law, very on brand for his character, and naming the first city after himself. On brand, also a very heady play. Why not? He has all the power. Why not name a city after him? So Spike, seeing all of this, reacts in a way that to me didn't make sense for the moment. I still need to clear the Autobots' name. They think that the Autobots are dead, and the Autobots, for everything that we know at this point, are dead. And so what does clearing their name have to do with anything? What is that going to do? So you clear their name. The humans already know that they're screwed because Megatron has taken over. So now what? We're going to pour salt on the wounds because, hey, look, the Autobots really weren't that bad. And it's like kicking a dead horse, basically. I just feel like it was kind of not the right move. But in doing so, he's so hasty in getting their names cleared, he gets attacked, the footage gets destroyed, he doesn't actually get to clear their name, and you know what? Spike is back. I wasn't too hard on him. Spike is back. He's back to his old ways, and you know what? I feel a lot more comfortable. Berger, though, tries to save him in all of this, and this is sort of a little bit of a redemption arc, but something I noticed about Berger, did his hair start to turn more and more purple throughout the episode? I didn't go back because I didn't have time with the constraints that I had of when I had to watch the episode, but I don't remember his hair being quite so bright purple in the first episode. Maybe it's stress, I don't know. But his hair was definitely purple, and purple obviously aligned with the Decepticons, so perhaps that was intentional in terms of what he did to himself or what the Decepticons asked of him. Just something that I actually noticed, and I thought it was odd. Now, the humans become slaves, and we've talked about that before. It's a little uncomfortable, right? Because slavery in and of itself for many people is uncomfortable, no matter when, where, how it takes place throughout humanity. And one of the humans had a shirt that had a giant H on it. I don't think that was intentional, it was a one-off, but I kind of wondered if maybe a writer or an animator put it in there, and it was supposed to be kind of a subtle nod to the Decepticons branding them. Because if you think about it, they would be the superiors, they would be the people ruling all of Earth, and so why not brand what they see as an inferior race with all H's so everybody knows their place in this new pecking order? I don't think it was actually intentional, but it was something I noticed. So we go back to the Autobots. We all think that they're destroyed. We find out they're not. Now, of course, I'm watching this thinking, of course they're not going to be destroyed because I know that there are more episodes to come, which is something that at my age, you just know. Like, it's something that you just know. When you're a kid, though, you're not sure, and that's the whole point. but they're saved by Trailbreaker's force field, which I mentioned during the recap. So he can save them from the sun. That's about the most OP thing in the entire show. We've talked a lot about Megatron's fusion cannon, all the things that it can and can't do, times that guys get hit and either are just dazed or they're actually really, really hurt, almost mortally. Trailbreaker's force field, if it could save them from the sun, they should have been walking around with a force field almost every single time they went anywhere. But yet Trailbreaker is not in every episode. So that's, again, we see a lot of this incongruent behavior when it comes to certain weapons or certain functions, abilities, and this definitely is one of them. So the humans are obviously doing the Decepticons' bidding. Spike, Chip, Sparkplug, they're all there. And Spike tries to create a diversion. He does successfully do so by getting Rumble to get electrocuted and knocked into a wall. And when he does that, Chip is able to escape. Chip's very smart. We know this. He's obviously worked at science labs. He's super, super intelligent, knows how to talk to Teletran 1. And he had a little bit of an oversight by going and rolling right through the laser security system. Now, it was clear as day in the show. Maybe it wasn't clear as day to him, but it just seemed like a weird oversight for somebody who is such a ridiculously smart guy. So Chip has to escape. He gets in the back of a truck. Seems a little bit weird that the Decepticons aren't checking all of these things, but maybe they feel very confident in what they've done already. And so Chip is doing so to escape, and we find out he's doing so to get to Autobot headquarters. He's able to see outside because this truck has a slit in it that is able to see, and he looks outside, sees mountains, and then he sees a bar. I don't even know what it was called, but he knew, oh, this is where I need to be. And he wanted to get to Autobot headquarters, and I thought it was funny that he knew where it was just by looking out and saying, oh yeah, this is what is familiar. So obviously the Autobots live near some dive bar somewhere, and I kind of wonder, do they go there? Do they have drinks there? Do they meet with the humans there? That'd be kind of funny visual, don't you think? How far did Chip travel, though, in this truck? Because the scale of the world that all of this lives in seems to be very skewed. We've talked a lot about the Autobots traveling by car everywhere, how long it takes them to get places. Sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes they're traveling to other countries and they're driving, so it would take them days, if not weeks, to get to certain places. I wonder how long Chip was in that truck, and I wonder what the scale really is of where all this was taking place. It seems like it was close, but then again, it also is aligned with how weird the geography has been throughout this entire show. So Chip goes there because he wants to see if he can talk to Teletran 1 and figure something out. And in doing so, one of the new Seekers shows up, confronts him, and destroys Teletran 1. That's like, what, the 5th or 6th time that Teletran has been destroyed? It's a poor supercomputer. I feel bad for it, but the unintended consequence that happened there is overriding the mission of the ship going to the sun. Because even though they were saved by a force field, Cosmos was still under the control of Teletran 1, and they were heading toward the sun. So the Decepticons do something that seems good in the moment, but is going to backfire on them. And Spike and Chip together in this episode are really killing it, if you think about it. Their quote-unquote help was not very helpful at all. But the humans are not going to take this lying down, and so we get kind of a Top Gun situation where we have fighter jets from the U.S. Army against the Seekers. It really wasn't much of a battle. The Seekers are highly intelligent beings, and so they know how to fight. They can use their brain, and they have everything that they need there. So they are thwarting the humans at every turn, and then all of a sudden, here come the Autobots. The Autobots kind of come out of nowhere, and there they are. And so this epic battle ensues, but the epic battle is just a bunch of cutscenes with the Autobots and Decepticons standing in place, or seemingly standing in place, and all they're doing is shooting at each other. We don't have an idea about how close they are, but in my mind I thought one of the two sides must have watched a Revolutionary War reenactment, and for those that are outside the US, the reason why I say that is because during the American Revolution, the warfare tactics back then were basically both sides standing in front of each other in an open field and shooting, because at the time, the weaponry that they had was extremely inaccurate. They'd continue to move closer to each other, and then they'd have more hand-to-hand combat depending on what was going on. And so it kind of reminded me of that, even though it probably wasn't. It was just a lot of cuts and a lot of standing still to me. And the Decepticons ended up being outnumbered and losing, and I wonder, how were they outnumbered? Once you thought you had the Autobots gone, the very first thing you could have done was to call as many troops from Cybertron as possible. And they also have added a few Decepticons along the way. And so it seemed like they didn't have their full complement, or maybe they did. But if they were truly outnumbered, it means they were truly outnumbered before all of this happened, and that when all of the Autobots left, that means the Autobots had way more people. So the Autobots were unable to do anything against the Decepticons except for react, and the Decepticons never called any troops. Seems like a little bit of an oversight by Megatron. But the episode ends with Berger trying to get out of his consequences like a young child, and honestly, that's perfect because he's embarrassed. He doesn't want to face consequences, but guess what? Consequences are part of the deal. So how did I feel about this episode overall? It was really rushed in a lot of ways. It seemed like they went way too far in trying to convince us, the audience, that the Autobots were truly gone. They were already being jettisoned out. Now we know they're going toward the sun, and we see the ship actually explode. And it felt a little bit contrived to me. That's all. This episode could have probably been 3 parts. It could have been a little bit more thought out. This particular conclusion of it seemed very rushed, just to me. The new robots seem to be here to stay. I think that's pretty obvious. We've seen a lot of them, and looking forward, we're going to get more stories around these Autobots, so I think that's cool. But this 2-parter overall really didn't serve a purpose, and I said that a lot of the 2-parters or multi-part episodes have been to introduce a concept or give us something new in terms of characters or what have you. And other than using introduced characters that we've already seen, this really didn't do anything. It didn't serve a purpose. It could have been 2 standalone episodes and it would have had the same effect. So not something that I don't want to say I'm disappointed. I mean, it's Transformers, it's fun to watch, but it didn't really have any impact on the show. And I hope that's not a precursor for everything that we see now, because there's another 30 episodes to go almost. And I hope we get to see something a little bit different. What did you think of this episode if you have watched it recently? You can email me some of your opinions, questions, comments, whatever. mattyicemedia@gmail.com is the way to do that. I want to thank everybody who's reached out. I want to thank everybody who listens. It means the world that you spend even a second of your day listening to me talk about something that is now 40 years old. I hope this finds everybody well. I hope this finds everybody safe. And I'll talk to you all next time. This is Energon Entries. The opinions and viewpoints expressed on Energon Entries are those of Matt Freitz and his guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. Energon Entries is exclusively owned by Matt Freitz and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.